again!
Boy.
We've come to it at last. The episode that was rumored a couple of weeks ago to be the installment that would kill Star Wars. The episode that would be as bad as Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi. That the Force would no longer be the Force, and that there will never be a chance to rescue Star Wars from this wreck. Well, before I tear into this latest episode of The Acolyte, let's sit down and have a proper discussion, you and I. Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem, not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and to help set up my rant, I'm going to address these three things in order. The death of Star Wars, the nature of the Force according to canon, and the nature of myth. However, if you're just here for the review and the rant, then skip ahead. The timestamps are there for you to navigate the video, and oh boy, it's a doozy. But if you're willing to get some crucial setup, then please join me for this quick but important detour. Just as with another story and fictional world that I really love, Tolkien's Middle-earth and the stories of The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and The Silmarillion, and everything else that supports those epics, there's nothing that Hollywood, fanfic writers, or even Simon Tolkien can do to tarnish my love of those books and what they mean to me. The same holds true for Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy, along with her hordes of minions and useful idiots, can never take away how Star Wars helped me to connect with my dad, nor how Star Wars helped me make special friends and have wonderful experiences over the years. And even George Lucas's special editions of the original trilogy cannot expunge the releases of those timeless movies of magic. You can still find them, they are out there, and they are yours to be had. But to be brief and stop myself from becoming auspiciously pedantic, Star Wars is only as dead as you decide to make it. If you don't like Disney Star Wars, never watch it again. A few years ago, I tried rewatching The Last Jedi just to see if it was as bad as I remembered it being, and I couldn't finish it personally. It was just so bad. But then I go back to Star Wars that entails A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, The Return of the Jedi, and I can barely get out of my seat for more popcorn. The original epic and characters are alive and well if you keep them that way. Small-minded, mean-spirited creators win when you allow their paltry interpretations and additions to the mythos of Star Wars to override your original love for the story. And if you can't help but feel angry whenever you see even the original Star Wars, then step back, give yourself a breather, and then get back to loving what you do. There's no one stopping you, other than yourself. Second, well, what is the Force? George Lucas himself had an ever-expanding view of what the Force was and ought to be. And at its arguable best, back in the original trilogy, the Force was an energy field that bound the universe together and sought the well-being of all life and matter. The Jedi were supposed to maintain the balance of life and use the Force to maintain peace. The Sith, on the other hand, exploited their connection to the Force to use its incredible power for personal gain, thereby upsetting the universe's balance. This depiction of the Force was easy to understand and beautifully set up the central conflicts to all of Star Wars. However, George Lucas himself made and then later accepted silly additions to the Force. Midichlorians became a scientific way to explain something that should have probably remained more mystical. And then others responded by making the Force not only mystical, but basically magical, with embodiments of the Force even that were given godlike beings and status and planets that acted as central nexuses to the Force, giving it life and even autonomy beyond its central mission and will. And over time, the Force has become this complicated thing. As such, George Lucas opened it up to far more interpretations and threw open the doors for people to add all kinds of funky Force powers that nowadays make the Jedi and Sith space wizards, but without the cool spells or understandable mechanics to make them really much more fun than swinging a lightsaber. Whoosh, whoosh. What this means for us in Disney's The Acolyte is that Leslie Headland was well set up to create a group, a religion even, that views the Force differently than the Jedi and the Sith do. In a way, I actually love the idea of a different religious perspective from various peoples and cultures who would see the Force differently. So much of our real world that believes in deity interprets it in various ways. That's how we get all of these various religions. And I find that beautiful and wonderful. Why not add that same wonderful variety and nuance to something like the Force if Star Wars itself no longer treats the Force as an energy field that binds all life and matter together, with its only desire being the universe's well-being? This episode, therefore, is Leslie Headland's greatest hurdle. Can she present the Force in a way that succeeds as a viable interpretation and lifestyle? Oh boy, we're gonna find out. This finally leads me to the nature of myth. As I explained in other videos, myths are alive and changing. They always are and always have been, always will be. As they are passed down, people come to love or hate the individual stories of each myth. And the myths that people love are taken and adapted, changed, and evolved by everyone's interactions with them. This process, however, once took generations to accomplish, but thanks to our modern technologies and global connections, we can share and change stories in rapid succession never before seen. As a result, Star Wars, this legendary story, this modern mythos, has undergone tremendous change in the life of its creator, George Lucas. Just in his life alone. Just imagine what's going to happen after he passes away. Eesh. Now, it's important for me to stress that myths do evolve over time. It's inevitable, and people have even fought throughout history to preserve their stories or to impress their stories upon other people. What we're seeing play out today in 2024 as I make this video, and as others make their articles, their videos, their posts, their speeches, and more about Star Wars, this is all nothing new whatsoever. This is all part of the same pattern that's played out across human history. And that is why I say, with tremendous confidence, that Disney Star Wars will largely be forgotten and relegated to the trash heap of history. Not that it will vanish without a trace, mind you, but that everything Disney Star Wars has done has a less likely chance to be passed on to future generations other than episodes 1 through 6 of Star Wars, the ones that George Lucas himself really wanted to make. Instead, The Acolyte is a story placed squarely in the center of this great conflict for what Star Wars will be in the present, in the near future, and in the distant future. Leslie Headland, along with so many other creators who have wanted to make a name for themselves and add to the illustrious history and canon of not only a franchise, but our mythos of storytelling, must deliver a story that will resonate with her audience now and through the generations. But has she succeeded? As of episode 3 of The Acolyte? Nope! Not a chance! Oh my gosh! This was a horrible episode! But even when I say that, I'll be honest, there are the bones for something better here. The only problem is that it just contradicts what we know of Star Wars so blatantly that it just doesn't feel like it fits. And when you remove it from the Star Wars canon and try to view it as its own story, it is yet again another first draft story full of contradictions, flat characters, conversations that make no sense. The training programs for these little witches makes no sense, and you wonder at the end, why was this even important to the overall story? You know it's important at least to understand, ooh, there's a murder mystery, but because it's so heavy-handed, you know that Jedi had something to do with it. But in a way you don't really care because it just seems like none of these characters are likable. There's no reason to get behind them and root for them, and there's no reason whatsoever to care about Osha and Mai because, well, Osha's just too clumsy and dumb to survive without the plot rescuing her, and Mai is an absolutely evil character and apparently has been ever since the very beginning. And yeah, why should I then care? Because our two main characters are absolutely the worst, and the Jedi are the worst because they executed these murders, and why should I care about this coven of witches? Because they were stupid in how they conducted themselves. They could have actually been a fantastic group with their own religious point of view, their own interpretation on the Force, with their own society that was actually thriving, that could protect itself and everything. Nope, we don't get any of that. Who brings bows and arrows to a fight with the Force and lightsabers and laser blasters? Come on! I'm not going to do a blow-by-blow for this entire episode because well, I think that'd actually be a little bit of a waste of time. And it's amazing how many people have already come out with videos to rant and rave about what they've seen and to break down every single little bit and why it doesn't work. So as a writer, let me tell you why this episode is unfortunately garbage and why Leslie Headland absolutely botched her shot at doing something unique and interesting with Star Wars that could have been cool, or at least as a standalone story, could have been cool. Unfortunately, it all just fell apart because Leslie Headland and company wrote a first draft and didn't bother reading through it. The ways in which I can tell that this is a first draft and not something that really got a whole lot of work to make it good is how many contradictions you get, especially when it comes to their interpretation of the Force. To this coven of witches, the Force is the thread. Is it a tapestry, or is it just merely a thread? We don't really know, but they say that the thread is not about good or evil or even power. Instead, it is something that empowers you to find your destiny. But the thread is what weaves your destiny. But no, you get to weave your destiny. Oh wait, didn't we say that this was not all about power? No, this is about power and who gets to wield it. The immediate contradictions in the core philosophy of these witches means that I don't even know exactly what they believe, and therefore I'm not exactly sure what I should take. In fact, everything that I could say, what I've actually seen other people say about what these witches believe, is actually everything that they themselves have projected onto this coven. If you take them exactly at their word, this is their core doctrine, this is their belief, this is their scripture, it doesn't make any sense, because the 4 core tenements of this coven contradict themselves. Therefore, I don't even know what these women believe in. Other than that, they believe that they can and should use the Force, aka the thread, aka the magic system, aka whatever Kathleen Kennedy wants this to be nowadays. They can use it to do whatever they want, including making life. Now then, this within the Star Wars canon is a bunch of hoo-ha because you're not supposed to create life using the Force. The Force created Anakin as a means of balancing what was happening with the universe between good and evil, with the Jedi becoming complacent and not necessarily degenerate, but not really aiding the universe in the way that they should, and with the Sith experimenting with life and with power in ways that they shouldn't. That, thanks to Plagueis and Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, you were about to have a real shock throughout the galaxy that was going to overturn everything, and we see that happen in the Clone Wars on both a physical and on a spiritual level. Then with the fall of the Galactic Republic leading to the Galactic Empire, and just all of the evil and destruction that was brought, the unnatural destruction of life and the use of the Force to corrupt good people and wipe out that sense of balance across the galaxy. The Force is there to maintain balance and the well-being of all life and matter. And because the Force could see what was coming and could understand what was going to happen, it created the means, even if Anakin was diverted to the dark side, that through his actions and the impact that he would have on the lives of others, causing them to make their own choices in turn, would lead to a sequence of events that, while absolutely painful for the galaxy and its inhabitants, would end up being a cleansing process and allow balance to return and for the Jedi to eventually resurge stronger and better than ever before. That was the hope, and that is what Disney Star Wars has killed. So apparently now Anakin really isn't all that special because some witches can create life. Well, okay then, let's actually take that as its own unique idea, remove it from Star Wars. Okay then, this is really cool. Some witches decided to create life. They've done something considered to be unnatural. And now they are trying to have their own family, their own society, and let's see what they can do. Can they create their perfect paradise? Ultimately, that's what they're trying to do. Yay! So how do you implement paradise? Apparently you implement it by not teaching the girls to behave properly. None of the other witches are allowed to say anything in terms of discipline or counsel or observation, and the leaders of the coven are absolute morons who seem to be in a very strained relationship and lover's quarrel that is eventually going to lead to a very nasty breakup. The relationship between the leaders of the coven is unhealthy. The way that the girls are being treated is unhealthy. The relationship between the twins is unhealthy. And the way that no one is actually interacting properly to help raise these children, to provide proper counsel and feedback. They don't need to be the mothers. They just need to say, hey, leaders, so we see that your girls aren't really paying attention during your training sessions. Maybe we need to work a little bit on that. Help them to become good students who are ready to ascend. None of that is there. There's no communication other than bad miscommunication. The relationships are toxic, and when you look around, this is not a true paradise. And sure, we can say, hey, you know what, if you had like a warriors of the Amazon together, the lesbian women who were able to form a very strong bond and packed and powerful army, perhaps they could have their perfect utopia, like where Wonder Woman comes from. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Sure, you know what, you could write that, and you could make it look really good and appealing, but that's not what this Coven of Witches is. It is dysfunctional. It's awful. And even without the Jedi arriving, you know that within time, this is all going to fall apart. Most of the people here seem to be miserable or don't realize that they should be feeling anything. And then when we get to the matter of the Ascension, we then get another powerful tenet of this coven. The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. Now then, if you actually think about it, there's some interesting philosophy to be had there, that one individual can actually be very powerful all on their own. But if you add another person there, either someone to complement them or someone to challenge them, those two bring all of their strengths and their weaknesses together and become a solid unit. That is what we call relationships, what you might even call marriage, or a good partnership like buddy cops. When you bring two people together to work in tandem through their strengths and their weaknesses, through good communication, one person becomes weak in the face of two united individuals. Unfortunately, when we see that particular interpretation put to the test, two individuals get easily battered aside. Now think about the power of many. If one person can be powerful, but two people in perfect lockstep and unity together can be even stronger, sure, a strong community bound together by purpose or by belief, by morals, by shared identity and history, they can be amazingly powerful. And you see this all throughout history. And it's a great thing to see in fiction when a community comes together and realizes that together they are strong. I think about what I just watched recently with the special theatrical re-release of the extended Lord of the Rings editions, and you get to see the Ents wake up and realize that they are strong, and together they're able to just obliterate Saruman's Isengard. Easy. And then when the Hurons go on out to destroy the orcs, they easily conquer the orcs. And the orcs would have been able to steamroll Rohan had it not been for the elves of Lothlorien showing up and joining forces with them at Helm's Deep, showing that two bodies coming together are just strong enough to hold off long enough against the might of Isengard for a miracle to happen. The power of one, the power of two, the power of many. It's actually not a bad idea. Unfortunately, again, when you see it put into action within this show, what is the power of many? You quickly realize that, again, these witches are not united. As such, they absolutely fall apart. What is up with this teaching, then? And unfortunately, the way that their ascension was brought about looked ridiculous. I felt more watching Hocus Pocus and the crazy spells cast by the sisters than whatever this nonsense was. It was silly. It was flat. It was ultimately meaningless because 4 Jedi in the face of many brought down an entire coven of supposedly superpowered witches. Now, granted, it's probably more of a bait and switch. The Jedi attack them, but the witches are going to come back, and yada, yada, yada. There's going to be all kinds of fun twists and turns. Yeah, I bet. But ultimately, the philosophies of these witches are contradictory, and where they don't contradict each other, they quite clearly don't live up to their own teachings, their own core beliefs. As a result, I don't expect these witches to have really any sort of power or influence. Instead, we get girl boss moments to show that they are all that they are all that powerful. But ultimately, it's really silly. Those girl boss moments were not earned. They're just simply thrown onto the Jedi, so that way Leslie Headland can say, my self-insert characters and my self-insert cult, they work beautifully, they're perfect, they're powerful, they can beat the Jedi and the Sith with their hands tied behind their back. It just takes this horrible Jedi subterfuge to destroy paradise. But you didn't deliver on paradise, you didn't deliver on real power, you didn't deliver on a good religion for these witches and their thread, and you didn't deliver on good relationships that I care about. As a result, this episode, if it were its own standalone story, I'd be all like, so what? A murder mystery story in space, and I don't really care because I don't care about these characters and everything contradicts. When you then put into the context of Star Wars, it absolutely doesn't belong. And here's the thing, it doesn't destroy Star Wars. What everyone was saying about how this will be The Last Jedi, no. The Last Jedi was far worse than this. Far worse in terms of character assassination, world building, destruction, and just overall laziness and stupidity, all wrapped up in a beautiful bow of spectacle that, upon rewatch, is nothing more than a travesty of cinematography and CGI. When I watch this episode of The Acolyte, episode 3, what I just see is bad writing. I think that there's something good that could have been had here, either as a standalone story or as a neat little side adventure within the Star Wars canon. The bones are there for something interesting to be had, but once again, it's a first draft. The dialogue falls flat. The characters have no real depth. Everything that Leslie Headland and company wants you to believe, they contradict themselves within their own story through the actions and dialogue of their characters. The Jedi seem absolutely awesome, by contrast, even though the episode goes out of its way to portray them as villains. As a result, I don't even know really what I should think about this other than it's a confusing mess. As such, it's a waste of time. Makes me feel disappointed in all of this. I am a little bit upset that they would spend so much money and so much time trashing Star Wars fans, trying to rewrite Star Wars canon, and do all this stuff to grow a whole new myth, only to really just cause more damage and bad feelings, all for the sake of a lazy, bad story. Supposedly, Leslie Headland and company are good creators if left really more to their own devices, but when I watch this, I don't know if I can believe that. Again, all the hallmarks of a first draft script were there on the screen. It was an absolute mess. So, what am I to believe then? My only conclusion after watching this episode of The Acolyte is that this show's an absolute mess. This was meant to be kind of the big wow moment to introduce us to the real mystery of what is going on, to introduce us to a brand new way of viewing the Force, but it all fell flat. As a result, the twists and the turns that we were expected to get in the next episode and going all the way up to the end of episode 8 just seems like it will be trying to shoehorn in something that can't really work. It's going to be sloppy, it's going to be messy, it's going to be bad. And as such, it's just going to be a forgettable installment within the Star Wars canon that, like I said earlier, is most likely going to be forgotten. When it come around 2034, how many people are going to remember The Acolyte other than to maybe make fun of it? Chances are, most people won't even remember anything. And if we can remember ourselves here on this channel to come back in 10 years and talk about it, we will. But as far as what we can save from this travesty and give on to other authors out there is this. Please edit your first draft. Your first draft is not the end-all be-all of your story. And it's going to happen many times. It's going to happen naturally. Even if you're trying to avoid it, you will contradict yourself in your own stories. Because, well, you have multiple ideas flying on around. No matter how hard you try, you will eventually write something that doesn't line up with something that you said earlier. That's okay. It's a mistake. And you know what? By editing your script, by editing your book, you can remove that contradiction and make sure that everything flows a whole lot better. And if you're going to write a religion, you don't need to come up with 1,000 years worth of history and know every single theological question and answer to go along with them. But what you do need is you do need solid tenets, core beliefs pillars that the society that believes this religion are able to stand on to support themselves. These beliefs should not be obviously contradictory. You can make them that way deep within thought and within philosophy, and that can be really fun to puzzle out within your stories, between your characters, as they explore their own beliefs or as their beliefs are challenged. That can be a whole lot of fun. But the core tenets, the core beliefs of any religion need to be sweet and simple for anyone to understand, and they need to be something that clearly to the believers elevates their lifestyle. Not necessarily makes them richer, but makes their lives have a deeper meaning than just the daily grind of working and sleeping. Instead, giving them hope, giving them purpose, giving them a reason to help others, or giving them a reason to do good, or to do evil if you wish to go in that direction. Religion gives people purpose. It gives them hope. It gives them answers to questions that they feel no one else can give them. That is what religion is there for. If your religion can't give you that within your story, then why do you even have it there? You might as well just simply take that on out and just have characters speculate on philosophy. When you look at the core tenets of the witches here on this planet, this strange coven, again, completely contradicts each other, and their own actions and lifestyles completely refute everything else that they teach. As a result, the thread doesn't make any sense. All that I can tell you is that if watching this episode as a complete outside observer, I would say, so the Force is real. We have these people who believe in the thread, and it seems like this whole thread bunk is a lot of Waco, Texas nonsense, where people are like, ooh, we have this religion that will give you ideas, make you feel important and special. Oh, why don't you come? And that you basically have one very powerful witch who's using the Force to manipulate everyone else and get them to believe her bunk, which then proves to be debunked by her own words and actions before the end of the episode. Just everyone else is too brainwashed to realize what's just happened. Now again, that could actually be a very interesting story, but that's not what they went with. So make sure that you are editing your story. Look out for contradictions. They will happen naturally in the course of writing. And if you're going to create your own fake religion, focus on what actually makes religions work. Build it up from sweet, simple steps, and then you can have fun broadening it, making it far more complex and deep. But you're not expected to reinvent the wheel, because you're probably going to get lost in the process. And with that being said, just remember this. No one can make you hate something that you love. If you end up not loving it, well, that's kind of on you. And if you need to take a step away from it, go ahead and do that. You're free to do so. In fact, I think you'll be a whole lot happier if you do. But with all of that being said, I'd like to know what your thoughts and observations were in regards to episode 3 of The Acolyte, where we get introduced to this fantastic coven of witches in the backstory of Hosha and Mai that no one really cares about. Or maybe you do, and if you do, I'd like to know why. Because so much of this episode didn't really work. I'd like to hear from you why for you it did. Give me reasons why, from a writer's perspective and from a fan's perspective, why it works, and I'd like to have that discussion with you. Otherwise, if you're someone who's looking for more insights, analyses, reviews, writing advice, please check out our other videos here on our channel. And if you're looking for a good story that I can recommend is free from most mistakes and contradictions, and definitely were not the first drafts, even though they might sometimes feel like it, you can check out the books that I myself have self-published. One that I think that you will actually really enjoy. If you're looking for just good fun, especially for some strong female leads, read my book, Bleed, Steam, and Steel. I think you'll really, really enjoy it. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.